Hello and welcome to another Real People Big Astronomy program. My name is Renee Kerrigan. I'm a member of the Big Astronomy leadership team. I'm also the planetarium director at the Peoria Riverfront Museum in Peoria, Illinois. And today I'm very pleased to have with me as our guest Shari Lifson, who will be speaking to us about her job as a corporate communications I've lost the full title. Coordinator. I knew it was three C's. Corporate Communications Coordinator for AURA, or the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy. And that group coordinates the big space telescopes, the Space Telescope Institute, NOIRLab, and the National Solar Observatory. So Shari will speak to us a little bit about her job, keeping communication flowing between all those big organizations, and a little bit about her life outside of astronomy. The Big Astronomy program is a National Science Foundation funded project that includes a planetarium show about the National Science Foundation funded telescopes in Chile. But more importantly, not about just these telescopes, but about the many diverse people with skills and backgrounds, people coming from all over the world, that it takes to make these big observatories happen and to enable the discoveries that happen at these observatories. That planetarium show is showing in planetariums across the United States and even in countries around the world. It is being distributed for free or at very low cost, and it was filmed in both English and Spanish. You can find out more information about that at our web portal, which is bigastronomy.org. And at that same place, you can learn about upcoming live events that directly connect you with STEM professionals like Shari, or people who work at the observatories in this Real People Big Astronomy program, Facebook Live program that we do. And you can also download an educator guide, find activities that were created by the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and learn about the educational research that's being done on this program by Michigan State University. So there's a lot to this program, and we're excited to share these resources with you. Thank you all for joining us. If you're watching with us here on Zoom, please choose what language you would like to hear the program in at the bottom. You can choose interpretation at the bottom of your Zoom window to hear the program in Spanish. If you have questions for Shari, go ahead and leave them in the chat, either on Facebook or in the Zoom webinar, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my screen sharing, which always takes me a moment, but I just want to say welcome to Shari. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for asking me. And I guess we should mention my other connection to this program besides working for Aura is that I am also co-PI of this
Absolutely.
with Tim Spuck. So, which I'm very proud to be part of this project. It's just been a real honor and privilege to work with this group of people.
And we are grateful to have you with us because you've been such a credit to the program. But I've just started sharing the screen. Can everybody see that screen now? Good. Okay. Well, we have some questions that we'd like to ask our guests on this program because the goal is for us to understand a little bit about your job, but also we'd like to know a little bit about the people that we feature as real people, because of course all of us are people outside of just our jobs. So as we said, Shari, you are the Corporate Communications Coordinator for AURA, which is a very nice alliteration in your official title. And so we asked if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself to start us off.
Okay, yep, there we go. So as I wrote here, I'm born in New York, north of New York City in Westchester County, went to school there, grew up there, lived for a while in Oregon, and then ended up back in Westchester County raising my two daughters who are pictured here. And one of them lives not too far, about a half an hour away from me in Maryland. The other one's in Austin, Texas. So I live now in Baltimore. The Aura corporate office is not really that many people. You would expect this big organization to have a lot of people, but we're really, I think we're about 15 people maybe. So we're a pretty, lean and mean group. Some of us work in an office in DC, and some of us work in Baltimore. And I chose to work in Baltimore. And that picture on the left is actually the building that I normally worked at before everything got turned on its head. And you can see by the banners there that it's also the home of Space Telescope Science Institute. So it's not that far from the Johns Hopkins campus, if any of you have been to Baltimore. And there is another building that is also the Space Telescope Science Institute on the campus. And then this is a building that's about a mile away that has additional offices, because that building just got too small for everybody that they were hiring. So that's where I normally work. And it's, very nice office, but since last March, I've been working at home. Last November, a furry friend joined me, and that's my dog Buddy. So he's here with me all the day, and sometimes barks at me when I've worked too long, but that's okay. I need that. And yeah, that's basically, since the pandemic, what I've been doing. And as I wrote here, I am a jack of all trades. My background really was first graphic design, and actually before that, even scientific illustration. But I also, for Aura, I do pretty much everything. So I write, I have designed and now manage the Aura website. I also create videos, I run all the social media, and then I liaison with a lot of other groups as far as communication goes. So with our 3 centers, NOIRLab, the National Solar Observatory, and Space Telescope Science Institute, but also on projects like this big astronomy project, and other projects like the North American Regional Office for Astronomy for Development. I'm also involved in that as well. So a very wide diversity in the types of work that I do. Before I started, Aura didn't have any communications person, so there was a big hole to fill. And and then part of what I do is just develop the strategies and the other things that we do need in order to do communications. And unfortunately, some crisis communications as well. So especially in this very uncertain time that we live in.
I'm sure this year you had a lot more of that sort of communication than you expected to have.
Well, I think throughout my career at Aura, I started in Aura in 2017, and then see, when was it? I think a year after I started, we had probably some of the people might remember this. We had an incident at one of our facilities that actually we don't even do science for anymore. It's where the Dunn Solar Telescope is in Sunspot, New Mexico. And we had to shut it down for legal reasons, but somehow it got to be this whole guessing game on the internet. I don't know if you remember this, that there were
I do.
aliens, or
Yes,
there
it
was,
was really
and so
unfortunate.
that was my first trial by fire for crisis communication. So it's happened more than I expected, but yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Well, so we asked you if you could tell us about your path. So you kind of alluded to this, how you're a jack of all trades. I love learning all that. I worked with you, Shari, now on this project for a while, and I didn't know how many different things you do as a part of your job. But can you tell us how you got to this stage in your career and your role that you have now?
So yeah, it's been an interesting road. And I would just say that one of the lessons that I've learned is you can continually ask the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? It doesn't stop, right? And so just, keep your mind open and your doors open. So I went to Cornell University's undergrad, and I started out as a biology major, but I had always done art in my life. My mother was a painter, And I just felt like there was something missing. So I ended up actually doing an independent major, which I created, which was scientific illustration. So the combination of art and science. And that has really been the theme of my career throughout, which is very interesting that that's where I started. After I graduated, I had children. I did a bunch of odd jobs. I actually worked also for the Cary Arboretum in upstate New York, and then ended up at Reader's Digest and worked my way up to creative director there. And then while I was at Reader's Digest, I attended Pratt Institute and got a master's in visual communications. So I had never done the graduate work, even though I was doing the work. And so I just felt like I needed to go back and do the study that I had missed by not actually, majoring in graphic design to begin with. And then in 2015, 2010, as part of the Great Recession, I was laid off. And so that was like a really pivotal moment in my career because, you work at a big company, you think you're just going to sort of be there, everything's comfortable, and all of a sudden the rug was pulled out from under me. So I took a part-time job working as a salesperson at an Apple store, and I started my own business, and I did a bunch of things, but I kept asking myself that question, like, what do I want to do in my next phase of my life? And one of the things I had done at Pratt was my master's thesis was about sustainability and paper. So working at Reader's Digest, I had worked in direct mail. We use a lot of paper. Most of it is wasted. And I just sort of turned the mirror on myself and said, well, what is my impact really? And so researched all about paper and sustainability and the environmental impact of paper and paper making. And I really enjoyed that. And so when I decided to go back to school, I went to the Earth Institute and did a sustainability management master's. So that's a very interesting master's degree because you do part design, part science, part management, and part quantitative analysis. And then you sort of bring that all together, and that's sustainability management. And then while I was there, one of my lectures, I saw this woman speak. Her name is Cynthia Rosenzweig, and I was so taken by her and what she was talking about. And she was talking about sustainability in cities, actually. And I thought, I just love to talk to her. And so I was trying to get a meeting with her, but she travels forever. Couldn't get the meeting. Ended up talking to a classmate of mine one night. We were in this big lecture hall, and we were walking out, and I feel like I'm the lone artist in the room. Like I felt like there were all these like lawyers and other people who were like coming at this from a much different avenue. And he said to me, "Oh no, I'm a graphic designer." I said, "Well, where do you work?" He said, "Well, I work at the Earth Institute. It's for the scientists." I'm like, "Oh, that's what I want to do." And the next class, he told me about a group that was looking for a web designer. Well, it turned out it was this woman, Cynthia Rosenzweig, who I had seen and really wanted to meet, and ended up working for her for this project called AgMIP. And AgMIP is the Agricultural Modeling Intercomparison Project, another mouthful. And it's housed at the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies, which is part of Columbia University. People don't all realize that there's actually a NASA center on the Columbia campus. That's a picture of it. It's actually above Tom's Restaurant. So those of you who might be Seinfeld fans may recognize that restaurant, but that's the restaurant, the outside of it, that's in all the Seinfeld episodes. And it's a place where both NASA civil servants and Columbia University employees work together in one building. And so I worked there with a bunch of NASA folks and did basically very similar job to what I'm doing now, as far as like, I did their website, I did all their communications, they had a lot of events, helped run events, I did all their social media, just like anything that needed design, communications, and it was great because, well, first of all, that project looks at the impact of climate change on agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia mostly, but also in the US. But when the grant that we were working on at that time was mostly focused in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So I got to go to Kenya, to Zimbabwe, to Kathmandu, just like all over, just went to Africa, went to Tanzania, to West Africa, to Senegal. So just incredible travel and meeting all sorts of people. And, it was an incredible experience, and learned just a ton about science communications. And as Donald Trump got elected, I became more concerned about the funding for my position. And also my daughter was living down here in Maryland, and I was living in New York City, and things were just, super expensive there. So I said, let me just, take a look around and see. And I had been down to the Goddard Space Flight Center here in Maryland, and seen James Webb like sort of all folded up. And when I saw the ad from Aura, that part of it was be working on, for James Webb, I was like, oh, that would be fun. So even though I have no background in astronomy, I decided to apply. And this is where I say, keep all your doors open. And, when I went for the interview, I said, I want to be perfectly honest with you. I don't have background in astronomy. And my boss, Heidi Hamill, said, well, we have lots of people who know about astronomy. We need someone who knows about communications. And so I got the job, and moved down to Baltimore, and then started traveling all over again. So it's been quite the journey, but definitely not a straight path, let's put it that way, to where I am now.
We have, featured so many different people with so many different jobs in this ongoing series that we're doing. But I have to say that is one of the most interesting career paths that I've heard, and I love the idea that your career embodies, because I would consider you, a very successful person. Of course, there's so many measurements of success, but to me, as an astronomy educator or somebody who works in a museum, the job you have seems like something to aspire to, something so interesting, working with so many different groups, and so I find it inspiring, even personally, to hear your story of that you had a career that seemed like your career, and then it ended, and you had to reinvent yourself. So it's a lesson well taken, I think, from anyone at any age, that you are never too old to decide what you want to do.
Exactly.
So you did talk about this when we talked about your path, but the biggest challenge in your career, and what you did to deal with it.
Right. So again, getting laid off was definitely the biggest challenge. And I think, as hard as it was, and sort of, personally, you don't realize how much a part of your job is, until you lose it. Right. And then you feel like someone's sort of taken away part of your identity. It's a really personal, emotional thing to go through. But at the same time, I stayed pretty positive, and I was very lucky that I had a lot of support around me, and I had good freelance work going that was helping me financially, so that I wasn't struggling too badly. And yeah, just keeping my mind open, and understanding that you never really finish learning. Right. So you might look at me and say, oh, she knows everything. What does she have to learn? I learn all the time. I learn from everybody I work with. I learn, software or whatever it is that still is evolving. And I think if you keep that in your brain, that you're never going to reach the point where you've got it all. It's always going to be this evolving thing that that you can make it through some of these tough situations, because I know people are going through it right now, and it's really hard.
Yeah, there have been a lot of hardships in with this year, but I think I'm hopeful. Everyone, cross your fingers or press your thumbs or knock on wood that we're on the upswing.
Yeah. So this is me. That was me in Africa.
Oh, traveling when you were working for
Yeah, for
NASA.
admin. Yeah.
So,
So
what would you say your favorite thing about your job is and why?
well, there's lots of favorite things I have. First of all, I feel so lucky to have my job because of the incredible people that I work with and the great organization that I work with, which is just, it's so people focused. It's so, like ethical and just really, it's a place where I can be very proud to know that I'm working for Aura. These are pictures of me since 2017 in many different places. So the top left is in Japan for the last CAP meeting. And I put that in there also because it shows all the people. And so the people and the connections that I've made, that's priceless. The travel is incredible, yes, but the people are even more important. The one next to it is Gemini, and that was right before the solar eclipse last year, or not last year, God, it's 2 years ago. I forget, I sort of just take 2020 out. 2019, July 2nd, 2019, I got to see my very first complete eclipse, and that's a picture of it underneath. And we had a tour of Gemini the day before, so that's me posing with the Gemini mirror. I'm holding it up. The one next to it is a Kitt Peak in Arizona. The one with the oxygen, that's Alma in Chile. So that's 16,000 feet. That was really difficult. And then the one next to that is Maui. And that is our new solar telescope that we're building. So I got to visit that, and that's just like this marvel of engineering. The one underneath that is Ceratololo, and that's the Blanco. I never knew. Now I can recognize any telescope just by the outside of it. It's amazing. At first, they all look the same to me. And then over to the left, that's Bill Nye, the science guy, with Heidi Hamel, who's our vice president at Aura. And I took that photo. So also just like getting to go to places that I never would have gone to. Like I was at the press conference where they were talking about the first visible follow-ups of the gravitational wave. And I got to do communication for that. I mean, amazing, right? Just like things that are on the front page of the New York Times, I get to work on. So I'm just like so thrilled. The group picture below that is in front of the Mission Operations Center at the Space Telescope Science Institute, and that's going to be the control center for the James Webb Space Telescope. So that's launching in October, and just another amazing and super interesting project that I get to be part of. That's me and Bill Nye and the science guy, and that's my favorite picture because I was so thrilled. So Heidi is vice president of the Planetary Society, and Bill Nye is the president. So that's why they were there together.
Well, I can see why some of these things represent the favorite things about your job. I enjoy seeing the picture of the folks at the CAP conference, which is communicating astronomy to the public, because I've been lucky to meet many of the people in that picture now as part of my involvement with this project. And it seems like such a wonderful group of people. So visiting wonderful places and being with wonderful people, it's hard to beat that.
It's hard to beat it, and doing interesting work along the way.
That's right. And learning along the way.
Learning a lot, and I've learned a lot about astronomy. I have to say, I don't feel as totally like a fish out of water as when I started. So
well, that segues nicely to the next question, which was, what is your favorite astronomical object?
So when I went to Chile the first time, the gentleman who was at that time the head of mission there, he took me down this dark road. His kids were in the van too, and we got out of the car. It was really dark. Turned out the lights, and I looked up, and it was just amazing. It was really like the first time, because I had seen really dark skies, but not for like 20 years, and so to look up and see the Milky Way was just mind blowing, and all the stars. And the thing when I went to Chile, I would always look for wherever I went was the Southern Cross, because it was just so amazing to me that I was actually seeing the Southern Cross. And then the Magellanic Clouds too are really cool. Those things that you could only see in the Southern Hemisphere. So they just remind me of, a time when my mind was completely blown.
Well, my involvement in this project started with the Astronomy in Chile Educator Ambassador Program, which there's information about that on our website, which is again bigastronomy.org. If you're curious about it, it's actually a program that's open to astronomy educators at universities, planetariums, and amateur astronomers. But I remember having that same experience. So I of course I'm an astronomy educator, so I've seen the night sky, pretty good night skies, but man, going out to a really dark sky in Chile, and stepping out, looking overhead, it felt like the stars were like, like right over my face, like they were just right there.
And you can't really take a picture of it or bring that experience to someone who's not there. You have to experience it in person. I also went on ASEP, which is where that picture that from Alma. That's how I
That's
went.
right. The
Yeah.
year you went, did you go in 2018? Is that right?
Yeah, I did. And that was an incredible experience. And thank you to Tim Spuck for asking me to come along. But yeah, it was just incredible to all the people that I met there. I met Tiffany, who's another person who's working on this project on that trip. And those, kept in touch with the people I met on that trip.
Yeah, it's a great experience. So two ASEP ambassadors here
Yes.
Are encouraging you, if you're watching, an astronomy educator, to apply if you have not, or if you're interested in seeing some of these wonderful places. So now a harder question probably, since I'm sure your job is very varied, and that's a theme that's coming across in many of our interviews that we're doing with this series. But what does a typical day at work look like for you, Shari?
So I put in the picture of me on the video because obviously there's a lot of video conferencing, or even before the pandemic, or is very distributed. A lot of the people that I work with closely are in Arizona, and they're in Hawaii, or they're in Chile. And so working across those distances and those time zones, I have to spend a lot of time on video conference, like I said, even before this. So that's, a good part of my day is broken up on just going to meetings. Behind that is a Hootsuite. I don't know, most of you might not know what that is, but it's a way of organizing your social media and more efficiently putting up posts. And so I use that software quite a bit. I go in there first thing in the morning, do my tweets, do my posts, because I am constantly monitoring social media for Aura and making sure that everything stays positive, and making sure that I'm amplifying all of the messages that are coming out of our three centers. So our three centers, Aura, we manage NOIRLab, which I've spoken about, I think is the main center that we have in Chile. And then the National Solar Observatory, which is based in Boulder, Colorado, and also in Maui in Hawaii. And that's the picture of their new telescope, which is DKIST. Well, actually, no, that's not the name of it. Sorry. It's the Inouye Solar Telescope. DKIST is like our shorthand for it. But anyway, it's an amazing project. It's got a 4-meter mirror pointed at the sun, and it will become operational this year. So it's the first image that they took of it, that we were able to publicize, ended up as a front page New York Times story. And so that was like a big win for the communications group and for all that we've been doing and the work that we've been doing. So
I bet our viewers will remember that picture, because I do. The picture of the sun that it released, it was like you could see the kernels, like the big structures of the sun's surface. It almost looked like popcorn.
Yes, exactly.
It was amazing. It was really incredible. So I imagine if I were in your shoes, feeling so proud about the reception that got.
Yeah. There was a lot of hard work. Claire Raftery, who's the communication and outreach head, at the National Solar Observatory just worked her butt off and did an amazing job. And they created all of this material that was there then for the press, but really got an incredible reaction. So we're looking so forward to actually having science coming out of the telescope. It's still under construction, but it should be sort of ramping up into operations towards the end of the year. And then Space Telescope Science Institute does the Hubble Space Telescope, which of course is an amazing communications project all on its own. I mean, it's just when it goes down, I look at the social media and it's like, we love you, Hubble, get well soon. It's like they're talking to a person. I mean, I think we all have this emotional attachment to Hubble. And then the newest space telescope that's going to be launched in October will be the James Webb Space Telescope. You can see it back there on our website. And then we have another one even going that's being constructed right now, which is the Nancy Grace Roman telescope, which is more like the Hubble. So lots of incredible, interesting projects for me to sink my teeth into. And a lot of what I do then is make sure that all the communications that are coming out of all of our centers, that there's cross communication between the centers, which never really happened before they had someone in my position. So that if there's, like right now we're doing for Women's History Month, the Rubin telescope, which is in the middle of that picture and is being built in Chile, is doing a social media campaign with the Rubin and Roman together. And so that's a great coordination between our centers. And so we really like to see that synergy happens.
Sounds like they're very unlikely to ever be a down day with so many
There isn't. No, but it's wonderful. It really keeps me on my toes. And then typical day at home.
Yeah.
So that's Buddy, and he loves to play. As I was saying before we started, I mean, he's a year and a half. He's a mini golden doodle, and when I'm not working, I'm playing with him these days, or working on my home, doing home renovations. I like to cook. That's lasagna. I made recently, spinach lasagna. And then that's my daughter and Buddy. And so the other thing, Buddy and I do a lot, is we walk. We walk about 3 miles a day. Just keeps me mentally in a good place and physically in a good place.
All right, I liked seeing your pictures here for examples of what do you do for fun?
So I used to travel a lot to Italy. I have a lot of very close friends in Italy, and that's actually from the Uffizi in Florence, which was actually I went to for Aura, believe it or not, was another work trip to go to Italy. Oh dear. So that's travel definitely. I like to do outside, in nature types of activities. So hiking, kayaking. I like to play tennis. Just to be outdoors. I really enjoy. And then I also do watercolor painting. So that's one of I do sort of weird watercolor painting.
I love it. didn't guess that was when you did. I guessed that was something you saw in an art gallery. So that's fantastic.
That's great. Yeah. So that's a real Zen kind of activity. Just like people do knitting or anything. It's just something I can just sort of zone out and just quiet the voices in your head.
I believe that's all the questions that we had for you, Shari. So I will stop sharing my screen that's all the set questions that we prepared for. But we did have a question that came from one of our viewers on Facebook. And for those of you watching with us here on Zoom or on Facebook, please feel free to leave us a question on the comments, and we'd be happy to answer them for you. So on Facebook, Gabrielle asks, do you consider that this pandemic has increased or decreased disclosure in astronomy?
I'm not sure I understand what kind of disclosure she's...
Gabrielle, if you're watching and you want to leave us a comment to clarify, do you mean getting the information out, the ability to communicate astronomy effectively? I'm not. And while we're seeing if Gabrielle responds, um,
Well,
Joyce, who's watching, said that she is a school counselor and is always interested in how career paths evolve and loves sharing this with students. So she's excited that you shared your story
thank you.
uh, of how you never stopped learning.
And I would say that, if we're talking about science communication in the age of a pandemic, that it has been a challenge. There have been times, especially last summer, when there was a lot of protests and other things going on. Like we pretty much silenced our social media because we felt like we weren't adding to the current conversation,
Yeah,
and we didn't want to just sort of chime in and be like this sort of like, oh, we can talk about this because we don't. We talk about science, right?
yeah.
And so we did put out a statement in support of Black Lives Matter, but we just sort of quieted our normal cadence of stories until it felt like it was a time when people could once more, be interested in that, to tell you the truth. So that, there have been times when we felt that, right around the election, that it just, um, that we needed to take a step back, especially in social media, but also in putting out press releases, so that we could let the other conversations have some space.
It certainly has not been a quiet news year. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You have the Hubble's 31st anniversary coming up, isn't that right? To look forward to.
Yeah, we had the we so that was one of the big disappointments of the past year, that there was a lot of activities and celebrations around the Hubble 30th that had to be canceled. But then the Space Telescope team really did an amazing job of pivoting to online and virtual events. So that was definitely a big challenge.
Well, I don't see any other questions coming in here on. Oh, yeah, Gabrielle did clarify that her question was about just getting the information out, and if the pandemic made that easier or harder. Sounds like it was not easier.
No, it wasn't easier. And then, you have the whole other part of communication that's to staff, to sort of internal communication, uh, communication to the science community that use our observatories, to let them know what the status of the observatories are, because normally you don't need to do that, right? The
Right.
telescope functions pretty much 24/7, 365 days a year, but for the first time in their history, these telescopes were shut down for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so trying to keep up with keep the science community informed about the status of operations. Are we going to be observing? Are we not? Who's observing? Where to put their proposals in or where to hold back. All of that, became a whole another layer of communication that we didn't normally do.
Yeah. Well, Shari, I just want to say thank you again for sharing about your career with us and about your life. I really enjoyed learning more about it because I've worked with you for a number of years on this project and I didn't know any of that history. I find it to be fascinating. So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. And for those of you watching, I'd like to mention thank you for watching today. We enjoy sharing this information with all of you, and please share the big astronomy programs with anyone you think might be interested. Help spread the word about our teaching about STEM careers. We have another program coming up soon featuring Marco Bonatti. So Shari works to share information about a lot of the observatories that are featured in the Big Astronomy planetarium film. If you've had a chance to see it either in a planetarium or live streaming, because it is still live streaming weekly and 360 degrees. You can find out information about that on the Big Astronomy Facebook page. But the next program that we are featuring in a Real People Big Astronomy event is Marco Bonatti. So if you've seen the Big Astronomy film, you'll recognize his name because he's featured in the film. He is an electronics engineer or a detector engineer who works on several of the telescopes in Chile, including the dark energy camera, which is on the Blanco telescope, one of the telescopes that Shari had a picture of in front of. So that's coming up in April on April 15th. And you can find the details for that on our Facebook page, and we'll be emailing it out to those of you who get our email. This program is a National Science Foundation funded program and has educational research that goes with it. So, Dr. Jessica Trucks, who's part of the research team for Michigan State University, wants to say a few words about the research.
Hi, everyone. Like Renee said, it's an NSF-funded project, and part of that, we're conducting this educational research. So we'd really like to talk to you guys. So one way you can help us out is if you can fill out the survey that just popped into the comments on both the Zoom webinar and Facebook, to tell us what you think about it. Even if you filled out the survey before, go fill it out again. We'd love to hear from you. And if you fill out the survey, you'll be entered to win a $10 gift card to Amazon. Another way you can help us out is during the survey, you can opt in to talk with us 2 times over the next few months, and afterwards receive a $40 gift card to Amazon. So if you'd really like to help us out, we'd really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
And thank all of you for watching. We've been happy to have you here with us tonight. There are accolades coming in on our comment section there, Shari. People have enjoyed learning from you tonight. So that link is both in the comments on Facebook and here in Zoom. So go ahead and click on that if you'd like to participate in the survey. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you on April 15th for Real People Big Astronomy featuring Marco Bonatti. Thank you, Shari. I enjoyed the program today.
Okay, bye-bye.